What's going on, college basketball fans? It's your man, Stephen Bardo, coming at you with another edition of Bardo's Breakdown. Man, is March Madness the best time of year or what, y'all? I mean, every year, man, there's some stories, there's great games, there's some controversy. Fan bases are pissed off, like a few Big Ten fan bases are right now. It was great, man. I got a chance to go on the score today with Lawrence Holmes, and he was really sharing his frustration about the North Carolina Baylor game, which, we'll get into all that. That's outside the Big Ten, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Happy March Madness to all of you. I hope you are enjoying the best time of year on the sports calendar. I know I am. I had to do, I went up to Minneapolis this weekend because I covered the Milwaukee Bucks at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I'm going to give you NBA guys a heads up. The Minnesota Timberwolves are for real, y'all. And Patrick Beverley, West Side Marshall Commando, is up to his antics and tricks. So that's just a side note. But let's get into it because we got a lot to get to. We're going to talk about the results of what happened to the Big Ten teams. We'll talk about I want to hear what you guys think, how we can, how the Big Ten can improve their performance. And then I've got a special guest that I got a chance to interview earlier today, Andy Katz. Yes, that's right. The Andy Katz will be on Bardo's Breakdown. It's his debut, and he was very excited, as you'll hear about it. Denny Baggett, Kenny Williams, Artez, 1982, Go Illini, 1994, Gailey Tucker, Manifest McClinton, Jeff Jarvis, Chuck Ramey. What's good, y'all? Glad you all could join. So let's run through the results from the Big Ten, the disappointing results from the Big Ten in March Madness. I put the winners first, so Illini fans don't get mad because Illinois is not in the Sweet 16. So Purdue has 2 wins over Yale and Texas. Really good game against Texas. And they play St. Peter's in the Sweet 16. Michigan Wolverines and their head coach, Juwan Howard, who was much maligned, did something that was wonderful. In 1 month, ladies and gentlemen, Juwan Howard showed his humanity, all of our humanity, where against Wisconsin, he puts his hands on a Wisconsin assistant, made a mistake. Comes back, Kerry Chandler, I think is the kid's name, the guard from Tennessee, that is really good, broke down, and Juwan consoled him like a father would, like a coach would. So in a span of a month, Michigan went from a black eye and, Juwan Howard's terrible for the game. Oh, he's Southside Chicago, to consoling a young man who was visibly upset that his team lost and could not continue their season. And he showed his humanity. Plus, I love the clip where he and Chris Webber hug and jump around and spin. That's humanity, ladies and gentlemen. That's what this sport is supposed to be about. And let's see if they run those clips of Juwan Howard nonstop for a week. Right? I didn't see anything on ESPN today showing Juwan hugging the player, but we'll get to that later. Let me go through these again. Illinois won over Chattanooga, and they were lucky to get past that, but they got beat by a better team, in my opinion, in Houston. Indiana won in the first 4 in an electric game that I got a chance to call on national radio over in Dayton, Ohio. They won over a very good Wyoming team, and then they lost to a really good St. Mary's team. Michigan State, a very good win over Davidson, and I think Michigan State played one of their best games of the season. They lost to Duke, but boy, did they play well. I mean, Gabe Brown, he was on a milk carton for most of the season. That dude was missing in action, and he stepped up big time yesterday. They were a few plays short of beating Duke to advance to the Sweet 16, but they go home. Iowa, first-round flameout against Richmond. I don't know about y'all. We'll get into what can the Big Ten do to improve. Iowa looked worn out, and they bow out in the first round against Richmond. Rutgers lost the game, I think, of the first and second round in the first 4. Rutgers and Notre Dame was the best game. Yours truly was on the call with Westwood One. That was an outstanding game. Notre Dame won in double overtime, and they were fantastic and almost beat Texas Tech yesterday to advance to the Sweet 16. Ohio State played their tails off, beat Loyal in the first matchup, first round. Second round yesterday, lose a tough one to Villanova, and they lost Kyle Young. When Kyle Young went out, I thought their chances diminished, and that's exactly what you saw. And then Wisconsin had a very good win over Colgate, but yesterday against Iowa State, we knew that Wisconsin's margin for error was very slim when Chucky Hepburn got hurt, because Chucky Hepburn had been coming on and playing very well. I knew their chances were slim. Johnny Davis does not seem to have recovered from that injury. He's not as explosive. He's not finishing around the bucket as well as he was previous to that injury, and they bow out against Iowa State. So those are the Big Ten results, and I want to leave something on you guys. The Big Ten has had 18 teams in the NCAA tournament the last 2 seasons, the last 2 years of the tournament. They've gotten 3 teams to the Sweet 16. One of those programs is a repeat. So they really had 2 programs in the last 2 years advance to the second weekend. That's Purdue and Michigan this year. It was Michigan last year who got to the Elite 8. And if it wasn't for an air ball from Franz Wagner, they probably would have beaten, I think they would have gotten past Villanova and gotten to the Final Four. So with that being said, can the Big Ten improve their NC tournament performance? I want to hear from you guys. Tony, if you see a good response to that, go ahead and throw it up. I'm going to get into what I think are some of the issues with, can the Big Ten improve their NCAA tournament performance? Rod Burgundy, good to see you. B. Koto, thanks for jumping on. Zach Brenneman, thank you. Good to see you guys on here. First off, for all of us that understand and we think that the Big Ten Conference Tournament really hurts Big Ten teams, I agree. I think the timing of it hurts. Now, will the Big Ten change? No. Because although the Big Ten, the NCAA, and all these places have nonprofit status, they're trying to make money. And that coveted window on Sunday, right before Selection Sunday, they get paid a bunch of money. Okay? So let's not get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost eerily funny that the birth of the Big Ten Conference Tournament almost coincides with the drought of national championships in the conference. Would you all not agree with that? I believe the first year for the Big Ten Conference Tournament was 2002. The last time the Big Ten won a national championship is Michigan State in 2000, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But I know people would like to see that change, but I don't think that we're going to change. I don't think that's going to change at all, because the Big Ten makes way too much money in that coveted slot from CBS right before Selection Sunday, because CBS wants as many eyeballs as they can get on their channel previous to rolling out Selection Sunday. And the Big Ten is a Big Ten ratings bonanza. Anytime Big Ten teams are on, CBS, ESPN, Big Ten Network, Fox Sports, wherever Big Ten games are played, those ratings are very high. So will the Big Ten change that Sunday window before Selection Sunday? Absolutely not. So do I think that needs to change? I would love to see them at least go to Saturday, at least give one extra day, because your champion has to go at least 3 or 4 straight days and games. Do you know how hard it is for your body to fully recover from that? It probably takes about a week. But at least if that window was Saturday afternoon, then you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then generally you travel Wednesday, or sometimes you travel Tuesday if you're playing on Thursday. So you give your team about 5, the champion, you give about 5 days of rest before they have to play and prepare again. But right now, Iowa played late Sunday, so they're celebrating and feeling good about themselves all Sunday. Then they travel back late Sunday night. Probably don't sleep very much because there's such a rush from winning a Big Ten conference tournament, any conference tournament championship, that's a rush. So they don't sleep on Sunday. Their bodies are worn out. Now you come back Monday and you try to go to class. Everybody's patting you on the back. Everybody's telling you how good you are. You don't get a chance to recover mentally or physically. So that window is not going to change. All right. The second thing, will Big Ten teams recruit differently? Because, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, the struggles of the Big Ten, in my opinion, are quickness and length. When I'll give you an example, and I'll get to Illinois in a second, but I'm going to use the Purdue-Texas game for an example. Zach Edey, I knew the first few minutes in that game against Texas, he caught an offensive rebound and got stripped because Texas is quick, they're physical, they're long. They're not tall and big, but they're quick, physical, and long. I knew Zach Edey wasn't going to be effective against Texas. Thank goodness Purdue has Travion Williams, who was doing his baby Hakeem Olajuwon, the shake in the paint. His footwork was excellent, and he went off. So, will Big Ten teams recruit differently to have success in the NCAA tournament? We'll find out, because let's look at it. What teams had success this in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament from the Big Ten? Purdue, Michigan, right? Purdue, Michigan, and Michigan State. I think you guys will agree that Michigan State balled out. That might have been their best game of the year. And they hung. They competed. They pushed Duke to the very end. Duke's one of the most athletic, one of the longest teams in college basketball. And Michigan State was punching with them toe-to-toe because they've got quickness. They've got length. Michigan has quickness. They've got length. Purdue has quickness, and they have length. But if you don't have quickness and length and guard play, if you don't have superior guard play, ladies and gentlemen, you can't advance in the NCAA tournament. I said before on this show, I didn't think Eli Brooks was a go-to guy. Well, he dropped 24 yesterday in a big, theirs might have been Saturday against Tennessee. He dropped 24 against Tennessee. If you're not a go-to scorer, it's hard to score 24 points in a second-round matchup against a team like Tennessee. So, quickness, guard play, and length, right? So, do you guys think that the Big Ten will recruit differently based on the poor showing of the teams in the NCAA tournament, right? Those are questions that I have. R.H. Mason, good to see you. Team Illinois Us. Ethan Lecker. B. Houston 34, ain't seen you in a while, brother. Good to see you. But hold on, Bardo. Me and you argue about college kids being tired. You said, I don't subscribe to 18 to 22-year-olds getting tired, remember? Yeah, Kenny, great point. But here's the difference. When I say getting tired, if me and you were to go back and play a conference tournament, we had to play 3 games in 3 days and then turn around and maybe have 2.5 to 3 days to prepare for an NCAA tournament game, that's hard to do. I'm sorry. Now, in a tournament situation, being on the 3rd game in 3 days or a 4th game in 3 days or 4th game in 4 days, and you don't have to play again for a week, that's different. Inside of a tournament situation, I don't have a problem. I don't subscribe to them being tired. I think they're young enough to overcome that. But when you put your body through that, and then you have maybe 3 days, maybe at best 3 days to repair your body and get back up emotionally and mentally to play a first-round matchup, I think it's too much. So that's where I that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. But that's where I think is a little bit different. Terry Jones, good to see you. Kenny says you will see coaches start resting their players in the Big Ten tournament. Brad Underwood, coach of Illinois, was smiling in the post-game press conference when Illinois bowed out of the Big Ten Conference tournament, because he referenced the previous season when they won the conference tournament championship, and they were exhausted against Loyola. They just didn't have it. They didn't have the legs. They didn't have the push. So there you go. Now the third part of can they the officiating and the ball used in the NCAA tournament is not going to change. I have a blast on Twitter because I read Twitter, and Twitter may not be a good barometer of across the board of what college basketball fans are thinking. But Twitter is a place where I go to look at the absurdity of fandom. And I saw constant complaints about why the Big Ten doesn't use the ball that's used in the NCAA tournament. And the officiating in the Big Ten conference, handicaps them, and they cannibalize each other, and they eat each other up, and they beat each other, and so they're worn down for the tournament. That's garbage. That both of those are garbage. Because here's the deal. The other teams play with the ball as well. It's not like the Big Ten teams get these brand new balls in NCAA, and then they're on offense and they're playing with the ball, and then if they score or they don't score, then they stop, and the other team gets a worn in ball is not as slick. Garbage, man. Stop. And any fan that says that, you don't know shit about the game. Excuse my French. That's asinine. And then the officiating. I so try to get Illini fans to stop bitching about the officials, because here's the thing. You're a loser if you complain about officiating. I'm sorry, you are. Because basketball is a metaphor for life. You're going to have good people you work with. You're going to have not so good people you work with. You're going to catch a break sometimes. Other times you're going to get the short end of the stick. Sometimes you get the win. Sometimes you get the big L. That's life. Basketball is a metaphor for life. And so people that constantly complain, and coaches that constantly, when I hear coaches talk about officiating, it bothers me a lot. And I don't tell them that. But I'm like, wait a minute. Isn't the other team, don't the officials work? Aren't they calling the same game that you're going up against the other team? And is there any incentive for a referee to favor one school over the other? Does that sound possible? It doesn't to me. And I'm going to give you something too about the officials. I want you to consider this. The officials that call the NCAA tournament games, do you know they get half the fee that they normally get in conference play? Did you guys know that? So the next time you want to bitch and moan about officiating, they're taking a pay cut to work the NCAA tournament. So I don't know what the fee is for all conferences, but I know in the Big Ten and the Big East, those officials they get paid half of what they normally get paid to call NCAA tournament games. So you think that the officials are trying to favor one team or the other when they're sacrificing to call in the NCAA tournament game? Come on, man. Get away from that. So the official's not changing. The officiating is not going to change. The officiating in the Big Ten Conference is not going to change. And the use of the basketballs is not going to change. The last I checked, all those basketballs are the same circumference, right? Some have a different feel than others. I'll give you that. But everybody's playing the same ball. So please, do yourself a favor. Don't go publicly and say those things, because you look crazy, okay? You look absolutely crazy. Big Ten needs better players. OSU team with Ogden Conley Jr. was the last team that I thought had elite talent. Curtis Dietz. What about 2005 University of Illinois? Darren Williams was a number 4 pick in the NBA draft, an Olympian. D. Brown, Luther Head, James Augustine, and Roger Powell. They didn't have a lead talent, Curtis Dietz. I don't know about that one. I agree about the talent needing to be more consistent across the upper echelon schools of the Big Ten. But that's not the last time that a Big Ten team had elite talent. I don't agree with that. I definitely don't agree with that. Yesterday, you said Big Ten as a whole lacks quickness and length. So is it recruiting? Do we recruit to compete in the conference? That makes sense, but it does not help us compete nationally. Laura Fox, ILL Laura. Thank you, Laura. I grew up with Laura in Carbondale, Illinois. Me and her took trips back and forth between Carbondale and Champaign. That's my lady there. Laura, what I'm saying, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It is recruiting. And so let me see how I can phrase this so everybody can understand. And then I'm going to get into this interview with Andy Katz shortly. The Big Ten Conference has to recruit a certain type of player because they've got to compete in the classroom. So they have to recruit a certain type of player. They can't go after everybody, in my opinion. Now, Michigan State seems to get guys that can play at the national level. Michigan seems to get players that can play at the national level. So I don't know what that is, but the kids from Houston, if you all watched Illinois and Houston yesterday, was there any doubt in your mind that Houston was not going to win that game? There was no doubt in my mind. Because when I saw the first 10 minutes, and this is not just Illinois, this was across the board for Big Ten teams. This was Rutgers against Notre Dame. This was Indiana versus I think Indiana was tired. Kenny Williams, to your point, I think Indiana was just worn down. I think they played something like 5 games in 7 days or something crazy. I think they were worn down. But St. Mary's cut them up. But if you look at Ohio State, Villanova, right? Ohio State battled back, but they were on their heels at one point. Just the overall quickness factor. You looked at the Iowa game; they were tired. I give them that. But let me think. Who else? Wisconsin against Iowa State. They couldn't get anything going. They couldn't get to the rim. They couldn't free up Johnny Davis. They couldn't do a lot of things that we were accustomed to seeing Wisconsin do because they didn't have the quickness or the length. And so is it more important for Big Ten teams to win Big Ten conferences or do better in the tournament? That's what I want to hear from you guys. Now, I want to bring in my man Andy Katz because he was great enough to take some time out of his schedule. For those that don't know Andy Katz is a Hall of Fame college basketball insider. He was at ESPN forever. I work with him now. He's one of my colleagues at Big Ten Network. He's on NCAA.com. He's with Turner Sports. And if you're going to find an insider for college basketball, there's none better than Andy Katz. In my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer. He may not be put in the Hall of Fame yet, but he needs to be. Because if Dick Vitale is a Hall of Famer, Andy Katz is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And he does a fantastic job of covering the game of college basketball. And he's as passionate as anybody that you're going to find talking about this sport. So without further ado, here's my interview with Andy Katz. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a special guest. Me and Andy been talking about doing this for a while. I'm pleased to be joined by Andy Katz. Andy, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Kind of a crazy week. I was in Portland, now here in Chicago. So traversing. I will say this, though, Stephen. I was reviewing the weekend for something we were doing for March Madness, and I think you had the best game. At the end of the night, I think at the end of the week, as I thought about every game, I thought that, that game between Rutgers and Notre Dame in Dayton will go down as at least the best finish game, most tension of any of them over the last for the first 4 and first weekend.
No, I agree. It was a heck of a game, and I guess it showed not only that Notre Dame was worthy of being in the tournament, but I think that narrative that the ACC was down, I think is being challenged right now with the fact that the ACC teams are doing so well. I don't want to be remiss, Andy, because you're a legend within the college basketball sphere, but I want to let people know what you do and where you are. To me, Andy Katz is a Hall of Fame college basketball insider, analyst, host. He does a lot of different things. He's my teammate at Big Ten Network. He works at the NCAA. He works with Turner Sports. Am I missing anything, Andy?
Those are the main ones, and I appreciate it. We're basically the same generation, so I feel a kindred spirit with you.
Okay. Well, when I say this, ladies and gentlemen, you know that I don't throw words out there a lot. Andy will go down as a Hall of Famer if he hasn't been acknowledged as much right now, because he does a fantastic job. He's been doing it for decades, and he's a Wisconsin Badger. So, we love our fellow Big Ten people. Andy, what was the best game that you saw out in your coverage this weekend in the first and second round?
So I'll tell you, the second half, I'm going to just take the half. The second half of the Gonzaga-Memphis game, it like made your hair stand up on your arms, because it was crazy in the second half. First of all, as people should know, Gonzaga travels well. It's about a 5-hour drive from Spokane to Portland. They also have a lot of alums in the Portland area. Mark Few's from Oregon, so he had a lot of his people there. And it got as loud as I've heard an arena in a long time during that run. And, Drew Timme, for all these different All-Americans, and a bunch of them are out, unfortunately, from the Big Ten and Kentucky. Drew Timme was sensational. I mean, that was an All-American second half. He literally took over that game in the second half. 21 of his 25 points. And I don't know if people saw my viral interview with him post-game, where he just almost we almost had the FCC down our throats because he stopped very short of saying the wrong word. But so much, and Stephen, I'll tell you, I love what you're doing for people in our profession, and I watch it all on Instagram, and I love what you're doing. You're very open about it, and I would add, I'm telling you, I absolutely love what you're doing. And the example that I would say for me the other night was observe and listen, because and be in the right place at the right time. So I happened to be in the back hallway. What we do as a reporter, you do the on camera with one coach walking off, and then you do the off camera with the other guy coming back. And so I was waiting for Mark Few, and Mark's notoriously like the last one out of the locker room. And so I was back there because I just didn't want to miss him. And I saw the whole thing with Timme and listened. And he was, few choice words, but it was his voice, the only voice, rallying these guys. And so that's why I used that in that post-game interview to draw that answer out, because I saw, his motivational tactics in the hallway. So I want to know, what did he say in the locker room? Because I obviously wasn't in the locker room. And that's when I got that response, which was tremendous. But that was leadership at a player level that you have to have in this tournament. I mean, you've played at the highest level and been to a Final Four, and it takes the best player, Chet Holmgren, whatever, he may be a great player, but he's not the leader. He's not even close. And when the game's on the line, you're not throwing the ball to him. You're throwing it to your veteran guy who knows how to work the angles, who's going to take the body hits and finish and be and that, to me, by far. And then I would say number 2, St. Mary's, Indiana. That Randy Bennett could take that clip and sell it at coaching clinics, because they ran their offense to perfection and sliced and diced Indiana. And as Mark Few told, when we were meeting with the coaches the next day, he made a great point. He's like, if you don't prepare for them, there's some teams, as you know, Stephen, that like, you can go out, do your own thing, and they got to prepare for you. But if you don't prepare for them and all their reads and cuts, you are done. Because like Mark said, when you look at these guys, you're like, these guys are going to beat us, because they don't look all airport. And they cut Indiana up. those are the two things that stood out to me.
Well, you had a great first and second round matchups with the games that you were covering, man, and there were some really good ones over the first and second round. But let me get to what everybody wants to know. What did you think about the Big Ten's performance in the first and second round?
It's incredibly disappointing. And look, matchups do matter, no question about it. This is true for any team. The SEC had 6, they got 1 left, and but look, we can run through it real quick. Michigan State had a chance to beat Duke.
I thought they played their best game of the year.
They played their best game, but again, the decision making at the end, just there was a couple of bugaboos where you're like, because against Duke, as you can't live. You give them that little window, they're coming through it. Yep. You cannot have empty possessions. And there was like 2 or 3 in a row down the stretch, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? So that was them. Ohio State, so unfortunate. I mean, Villanova is so well schooled, and you got to play a great game. And I'm not saying they would have won, but it just was so unfortunate that Kyle Young went out again.
I agree. I totally agree.
He is such an important piece of that team, and for him to go down again, because it was a game when he went out.
Yeah.
And so that's just, that's unfortunate. The Illini, I don't know. I kept waiting all year for them to play up to their potential.
Yep.
And they never did. And, I think there's going to be a real dissection in the offseason because, I thought you made a great point on Kofi. I've had many NBA people he got bottled. I mean, Kelvin Sampson did a great job. And they swarmed him, and Kofi couldn't do anything. And you think that's Houston. What about the Houston Rockets?
That's right.
Not the Houston Cougars. So that's a major concern for him. Now, he can make a lot of money in Europe, but I don't see it in today's NBA. It's like he's born 20 years too late. The Curbelo went on Twitter and said, looking forward to next year. And if that's the case, and that's fine, but they need to have like a heart-to-heart with him, because it was just all out of sorts. And then he didn't play. So clearly, Brad's finally like, I'm going with these guys. Yeah. Maybe not the most talented, but I'm just going to go take the lesser of what I can do. So that was disappointing. Wisconsin, a couple things. They've not been playing well the last 2 weeks, really. True. Since the Purdue game.
True.
Losing Chucky Hepburn, obviously that is crushing. We saw the backups were nowhere near the same level. And Johnny, just something's been missing really since that injury, where he's not as explosive.
I agree.
He was not finishing at the rim the way he normally did. You cannot underestimate. And I saw the post-game comments from Gabe Kauscher, played at Minnesota, said he never liked Wisconsin, and he was up for it. And boy, did he play well. And Iowa State didn't, they were tougher. And it was just, once again, not a great matchup for them. And think about Purdue. Purdue played well, and now Purdue plays St. Peter's to get to the Elite Eight. They don't play Kentucky.
That's right.
The thing with this tournament.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So Purdue, they got a golden opportunity in front of them to play St. Peter's of all teams and not Kentucky.
What did you think of Michigan's run and getting to the Sweet 16? What do you think about them, Andy?
Well, look, I mean, I think we would agree that all season long, we thought they kind of underachieved.
I agree.
This is what they were picked, top 10 in the country in the preseason. They have talent, they got a lot of talent. And so, I mean, if you at the beginning of the season said, hey, Colorado State, Michigan, who's going to be the 6, who's the 11? You never would have thought it would have been reversed.
That's a great point.
Seed, so they played to their seed. And, Tennessee, I thought actually kind of overachieved this year versus Michigan underachieved. So again, I think Michigan has more talent. And now this next matchup, Michigan's going to have to be very disciplined. They have the better big man, but their guards are going to have to play their best game of the year, especially defensively, if they're going to beat Villanova. But I think it's great. And I do want to say that, and I was not part of that chorus, condemning Juwan Howard. he did what he did was wrong. He got penalized. Let's move on. I have never said someone should be fired. So I didn't say that. But I also think now, as many people should publicly say, what he did was wonderful. And, hugging Kennedy Chandler, great sportsmanship. Yes, there's a relationship. But I actually thought that was the moment of the weekend. It was kind of funny, the cheerleader thing that I covered when they got the basketball, but the great moment. That was
great, by the way. That was great.
Yeah, with a great moment. I thought that was incredible sportsmanship and just showed a real side. And also loved his warmth with Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, and Ray Jackson. I love that these guys are all coming together to celebrate Michigan. I've never been a fan of taking down banners or vacating. You can penalize schools if there are violations, of course, but things happen. We all saw it. And so I've just never been a believer that you pull down banners or you erase records. I mean, it happened. There's other ways to penalize. So anyway, those are things that I remembered that I thought were great.
All right, Andy, how does the Big Ten improve their results in the NCAA tournament? Is there one or two areas that you think that they can improve on as a league to improve?
So, I think there's no question they need to be more athletic. I think that's getting exposed. Look, the one thing about the Sunday final, as an example, Iowa, that's just not going to change. We have to be realistic. There's no way the Big Ten is giving up the money, the exposure of that CBS window into the selection show. It's not happening. Do I think it affects that winner? Yes. We saw it with Illinois last year. Brad Underwood was adamant that made them tired. And I know last year was weird with the bubble. And then Iowa, they turn right back around and play a really good Richmond team and clearly didn't look the same team. So, there's no question that has an effect, but it's not going to change. So, the other thing is that's unfortunate. If you look at the seeds, the Big Ten did not have a 1 or a 2. Why is that? Because they absolutely cannibalize each other.
True.
Two teams in the first 4 with Rutgers. I really believe that Rutgers would have done the same thing that Notre Dame did, because I didn't like this Alabama team. I think Rutgers would have beaten Alabama.
I agree.
And I actually think Rutgers Texas Tech would have been a really good game. You know what I mean? So I would not have been shocked if Rutgers had gotten to the Sweet 16. But if they just won one more game, they wouldn't have been in the first 4. So, it's just there's almost too much balance.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. And you know what? I'm going to ask you this last thing. What are your thoughts on Kevin Willard becoming the head coach at Maryland?
So, we kind of knew this was likely going to happen. Here's the deal. Willard, here's where he's different than Turgeon, is that, where he's similar is a little vanilla personality-wise, but passionate. He's got a little more passionate, more energy. Maryland had players, so I don't know if I should say better recruiter, because Maryland had better players, and I know it's Maryland. You should get better players in Seton Hall. So the intensity is there. He's done very well against the Big Ten, actually, in non-conference. The thing for Kevin Willard, though, is, and Maryland fans are not going to be patient with this, he hasn't won in the NCAA tournament. And he's got to do that, because that's going to be an issue. And that's what Maryland fans want. They want to advance in the tournament like everyone else. And that fan base will not be they won't be waiting around for that. So, but he'll add a lot of energy. It'll be feisty, and it'll be interesting. I can already see a Willard, Fran McCaffrey, chomping. He'll go jaw to jaw with people. So that'll be interesting.
Andy, where can people follow you if they want to?
At the Andy Katz. When I switched from ESPN, there was another one, so I'd add the. So it's like the Ohio State, the Andy Katz, and on Instagram again. So there's another one out there. So it was the real Andy Katz.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Andy Katz. Andy, I know you got to run. Thank you so much for your time, my man. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
All right. So let me exit that. Let me get the screen back to the way it was. I had to turn my iPad around for my IG folk. So what did you guys think of what Andy Katz was saying? Because I thought he brought up some really good points that kind of informed me to some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today. And, I thought he did a great job. So let me pull up some of these here. Howard made a mistake, and his negative actions is not who he is as a person or a coach. Maybe the reset and time for Jawan to take a break and the team rallying around him is making a difference with how well Michigan is playing in the tournament. Kevin White, that's a very good point. I thought his humanity was on full display. I loved it. I think that, it's a good metaphor for life. Again, I think ball is life. Whoever came up with that phrase, that ball is life, knew what the heck they were talking about, because you can mess up and hopefully you get a second chance. And when you get a second chance, you can really capitalize on it. And I think Michigan being in the Sweet 16 is the irony and the thing that is kind of cool about this sport, and the fact that he got another chance. And now look at what Michigan's doing in the Sweet 16 for the second year in a row. Brian K. Hurd, good to see you. K. Sims, what's going on? L. Terrell, 73. Thanks for joining. Matthew Fetish, what's good? K. Mess, 65. Todu, 72. Jordan, 21, 34. Roy B. Carter, 007. Q, the scorekeeper, what's happening? LJ, what's up, Larry? Good to see you, brother. Let me see who else. Let me see what Laura's talking about. Not sure how many seniors Rutgers is graduating, but they could be a Big Ten dark horse next year. No doubt about that, Laura. Let me see. Greg Boysaw, ILL. When I grow up, I want to be behind the scenes guest on Bardo's Breakdown. Thanks for sharing the celebrity guest. I appreciate you, Greg Boysaw. Another classmate of mine in Illinois, great football player. And Greg Boysaw is a great example. We had the golden era of Illinois athletics. And I know that sounds bad. That was a long time ago. But we had the golden era because the hoop squad and the football squad were inseparable. Like, we all hung out. We weren't bickering and, fighting over the co-eds and all that. We were cool. Marlon Primos, Mo Gardner, Big Bopper, Mel Agee, God rest his soul. Mike Bellamy, Howard Griffin, my Big Ten Network colleague on the football side. Greg, who am I missing? Sean Streeter, Romero Bryce. I can go on and on. Henry Jones, Quentin Parker, Jeff George, Tim Scully. I mean, I could go on and on football players that we hung out with. Greg was one of them. And we loved being around those guys. And they were balling. They had the best bowl games. They had some of the best comfort behind victories. Sean Wax was on that team. So we all hung out. And it's good to see. Let's see. Steve Prophet, good to see you, Steve. Next year, we build on offense, bringing Kofi off the bench. Steve, it's not – see, Andy Katz made a mention of something, and I wanted to really mention this. Just because guys tweet after a game means absolutely nothing. These are 18 to 22-year-old young men. They're impressionable. They're emotional. And after a loss like that, I think you naturally want to get supported and feel good about yourselves. And one way to do that is to go on Twitter and make an announcement so that you get positive feedback. But you got to wait at least 2 weeks after their last loss to figure out what players are going to do. You don't want to get your hopes up too high in hearing a tweet and them saying I'm coming back, or thinking that automatically Kofi Coburn is coming back, because that's not an automatic. None of these players, from Illinois to Wisconsin to Michigan State to Michigan to Purdue, none of these guys are guaranteed to come back next year. None of them. Some players may hit the transfer portal. Some players may decide to try their luck in the NBA. Some players may choose to go overseas. Some people might choose to go to the G League. They might be tired of college. They may have gone to college to try to get a better professional profile. So don't get caught up in making assumptions. I'm not picking on you, Steve. I appreciate you bringing this up. But I don't want you to get your hopes up too high because it's too soon after a loss. You've got to let these young men go back to campus, get back into their normal routines, hear what some of their options may be moving forward, and then they can make better and more informed decisions. Manning, Bannon High, my brother's homie. Okay. Oh, Marlon. Yes, sir. I didn't know you knew Marlon, Mark. Dude, Marlon was my man. I was going to say something about our habits, but I won't do that. Raphael Davis just joined on IG. Raphael's done a heck of a job this year with Big Ten Network. I will be previewing Purdue and the Sweet 16 with Raphael Davis. So tune back to Bardo's Breakdown. We'll do an interview on that. It won't be a live show like this. It'll be an interview, but Raphael will break down what he sees for the tournament overall and for the Big Ten teams, Michigan and Purdue in particular. Appreciate you, brother. Jawan's situation, even though it was a bad light, just showed what his team feels about him. If they didn't care, they would have folded. That's Mark Wade, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best point guards in UNLV history. I think Mark may have led the assists. He led the country in assists 2 seasons at least. And I played against and with Mark a little bit in pro ball. He knows what he's talking about. Let me see. Let me go back. Kevin White makes a good point. I hope Illinois does not give up on Curbelo. Kevin, this is a great point. And I kind of want to bring this up to Illini fans and Big Ten fans because people enjoy Curbelo or they hate him. He's kind of a lightning rod type of guy. The reason Brad Underwood, in my opinion, of course, I don't know because I wasn't there and I haven't talked to Brad. But I think the reason Brad Underwood did not play Curbelo in the second half is because after he came back from his injury, he was inconsistent. You didn't quite know which Andre Curbelo you were going to get. And so what Brad would do is put him on the floor, see how he responds, and then make a decision whether he needed to stay on the floor longer or not. So Brad, knowing that this is you win or in advance, you lose, you go home, he's going with his gut. And I thought his gut was right. He brought R.J. Melendez and Luke Goody in. And what do R.J. Melendez and Luke Goody have? Length, size, and more quickness than DeMonte Williams. It was hard for me to watch DeMonte not be a factor for his team down the stretch, but he couldn't play in that game yesterday. Those guys were too physical, they were too athletic, and they were quick. He couldn't keep up. Trent struggled until he hit that jumper at the end of the first half. He was struggling to keep up. He played a little bit better in the second half, but that's my thing. And so Brad Underwood went with his gut, and I think he was right. I didn't think Illinois was going to beat Houston in the first place, but they improved in the second half. And I know Brad Underwood thought that technical on R.J. Melendez's dunk was a momentum killer, and it very well could have been. But I just think that Illinois lost to a better team yesterday. But I don't think that Illinois is going to give up on Curbelo, Kevin White. I think that they'll have to go into off season. Hopefully Andre will want to come back because the minutes are going to be there with Trent and DeMonte moving on. And so hopefully he comes back into the fold. Carrie D, what's up, baby? Love you. That's my sister, Carrie D. Jumped in on IG over here. Let's see. Let me get a good one in here. Joe Stovall always comes strong. Officials award aggressive play. If you apply constant pressure on the defensive end of the court, officials are forced to determine whether a foul occurred on almost every play. Players will be given the benefit of the doubt, and officials will swallow their whistles in crucial moments. See the end of Arizona, Texas Christian, TCU game. Great point, Joe. On offense, if you are attacking the basket from all areas on the court, officials will favor that style of play and reward teams with more free throw attempts. Just play the game. Joe Stovall is a member of the tribe, and Joe always comes strong. He never comes weak. We have a saying in basketball: if you bring that stuff in the paint, you better come strong or get that weak shit stuff out of here. Excuse me. So Joe makes great points. When you're forcing the issue and you're not playing on your heels, the officials naturally give you the benefit of the doubt. And what I saw from the Illini in this tournament, they played on their heels in both games. I don't know why. Funny things happen. If you want to get some insight to what can happen on the college basketball scene in the shoe wars that influence high school recruiting in college basketball, go look up Black Market by Merle Code. Black Market is the book written by Merle Code. Merle Code, if you guys remember, was the Adidas executive that got caught up in that FBI scandal. He's a former college basketball player at Clemson. He's been in and out of the game. It's a fantastic book. And if you want to know more about how a team can arrive at an NCAA tournament and be fragmented, go get that book. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. B-Ball Coach 12, thanks for joining. Donovan Lang, my man, Mamela, watched that game and Timmy was balling. He took over the game with fundamentals and smart basketball. If you guys have not watched, if you didn't get a chance to see Gonzaga Memphis, go on YouTube and look at the highlights because Drew Timmy from Gonzaga will be all over it in the second half. He had 25 points, and I believe Andy Katz said he had 21 of them in the second half. When Memphis had a double-digit lead at one point in the first half against Memphis, and he took over the second half to ensure that Gonzaga could travel. You guys may be wondering why there's no label on this bottle. The Big Ten Conference Tournament and the NCAA Tournament, you can't bring a bottle out that is not sponsoring or working with that tournament. They don't give any free advertising whatsoever. So guess what Bardo's Breakdown's doing? The same thing. So if any company that creates these flavored waters or a soft drink or something wants to sponsor Bardo's Breakdown, I'll have that joker right here the whole time. Every time I turn, you'll see it. I'm just saying. So let me see what else. Thank you, Donovan. Appreciate you, my man, for always getting up. Donovan is in not Thailand, Singapore, I believe. I think Donovan's in Singapore. He's in that region. So he gets up early to come check us out. And I love him for it. Let's see. Robert Mitchell says, when in tourney, Big Ten has 3 to 4 players going lottery this season. Talent is there and on upswing. I think it's style of play for Big Ten teams that bites them the most in the NCAAs. Robert, you may be right. ILL, by the way. Robert Mitchell, classmate of mine in Illinois. The talent is there and it's on an upswing. I would agree with that to a certain extent. To a certain extent, I would agree with that. Because I think this year was somewhat of an anomaly for the Big Ten because Bryce McGowan's from Nebraska, the very talented freshman, announced today that he's going to the NBA draft. I would be surprised if Malachi Branham, the very talented freshman at Ohio State, doesn't at least test the waters because he's an NBA player. The emergence of Johnny Davis and Jaden Ivey, I believe those guys have to go. Keegan Murray, they have to go because they're already in lottery talks. So they got to leave. But to me, Robert, this year from a wing standpoint was an anomaly. If they do it again next year and the following year, that's different because Juwan Howard's bringing in top 5, top 10 recruiting classes back to back. But I want to see it done across the board. All right, but good point. So let me see. Let me think. Tournament performance will garner national approval. Let me get somebody. Oh, okay. Chuck Ramey says the difference in yesterday's game between Arizona and TCU showed the difference between length and quickness, and bulk showed up at the end of that game. Chuck is making a great point. The center for TCU who played his tail off is a big, lumbering guy, but he gave it all he had. And TCU is a physical team that represents the personality of their head coach, Jamie Dixon. Tough, hard-nosed. They were physical, and they fought Arizona tooth and nail. But what Chuck is alluding to, what I think, is that at the end, that athleticism of Arizona took over the game, and it made the difference in overtime. But my goodness, the first player to ever get arrested in NCAA tournament history almost happened last night, ladies and gentlemen. If you were watching that Arizona TCU game when Benedict Mathurin caught a shovel pass from Coloco, and he cocked that thing back from Georgia and hammered it home in the lane on the big fella from TCU, I was in my bed watching the game. I screamed. I know my neighbors around me were like, is this dude getting robbed or killed? I could not believe that was the best in-game dunk on another player in college that I've seen in a long time. That was by far the best dunk of the year. It may have been the best dunk in the last few years. I'm telling you, that was filthy. Filthy. Go back and look at it if you haven't seen it. It's one of the nastiest dunks you'll ever see in your life. To me, it's top two. The best dunk I thought I saw in NCAA tournament play was when Johnny Dawkins reversed on Navy. I mean, he was coming down the floor. It was like a 2-on-1 situation, and this Navy guy jumped, and Johnny Dawkins turned around and like yak over his head backwards on the dude in the NCAA tournament. That is the number one. Because just to have the chutzpah to come down the court and turn 180 on a dude in an NCAA tournament game, that's number one. But Benedict Mathurin's dunk from Arizona last night, oh my goodness. He should have got arrested for that. That was criminal, ladies and gentlemen. It was nasty. Go back and check it out. But thank you, Chuck Ramey. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Bardo's Breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed Andy Katz. Do me a favor. Please share Bardo's Breakdown with people you think are college basketball fans and as knowledgeable as you are. I want to grow this platform and really provide this type of value and insight, because I get paid from the top networks in the country, but I can't talk like this on those networks. I can be honest and open with you all. So please, if you'd be so kind, as if you know, because I don't want people who are fringe. I want people who really love the game. If you have friends and people and colleagues that you know love college basketball, please tell them about Bardo's Breakdown. Share the show. I'd really appreciate it. I thank you so much for your time. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much. God bless. Check back in, because I've got Terry Mills from Michigan breaking down Michigan's Sweet 16 matchup with Villanova and some of the insight on the Michigan Wolverines. And I have Rafael Davis coming. These will be interviews this week previewing the Sweet 16 matchups for Purdue and Michigan. So come back to Bardo's Breakdown daily to check out what I'm putting up next. Love you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Y'all have a great evening. Peace.